Hi, boys and girls. It's Miss Kelly, and today we are moving on. We are on Unit 1, Week 2, and we are now on Day 2. So let's take a look at our learning goals for today. We're going to practice our active listening, identify key details in a text, use key details to determine the central idea, build stamina for independent reading, use coordinating conjunctions to combine ideas in a sentence. Analyze a text-based informative or explanatory essay prompt. Analyze a writing checklist. And generate questions to help with planning an informative or explanatory essay. So first, we're going to review, and we did see this before, planning an informative or explanatory essay. Remember, writers have a purpose. It might be to persuade or entertain, and it also may be to inform or give facts about a topic. So if you are writing an informative or explanatory essay, you're usually presenting information about a single subject. You are sort of reading and taking notes from print sources. It may be a book, it may be a magazine. You may listen to or view or take notes from digital sources like a video or a podcast. And you need to organize those facts and details in a way that makes sense. So if you remember back when we wrote an informative or explanatory essay that was based on the story, the structure of a corn plant, and the video harvesting corn, and we took notes about those things, and then we kind of combined them to write the description of a corn plant. Well, we're going to be doing that again, and we're going to be using two different sources this time. So let's first take a look at the writing prompt and sort of take a look at what is it asking us to do. Okay, based on facts and details from the text and illustrations of a short history of a special plant, which is in our book, and we have looked at that. There it is. It's on page 12, starts on page 12. And information from the video, Corn from the CSA. Write an informative or explanatory essay in which you explain how corn is produced in the United States. So it says, be sure to include an introduction, relevant facts and details from a short history of a special plant, and the video, Corn from the CSA. And finally, a conclusion related to the information that is presented. That's very important. So those are the two sources that we're going to be using for this informative or explanatory essay. We're going to be using a short history of a special plant and a video called Corn from the CSA. Now, here's a little checklist that sort of helps you if you are writing an informative or explanatory essay. So we're going to be sort of referring back to this checklist and looking back at it to use as we plan our essay, when we write our first draft, when we revise it and edit it, and do our final draft, okay? So let's take a look at what is on this checklist, okay? Here are things that we need to keep in mind when we're writing an informative or explanatory essay. I took notes about what I saw and heard. So taking notes about a short history of a special plant and taking notes on the video. I stopped, paused, or replayed the source video as often as needed. I used a strong introduction to engage readers. I introduced the topic in the first paragraph. I organized concepts in a logical way. I included facts and details from credible sources to support the main idea of the paragraph. I cited the source text and or the author as needed. I closed with a strong ending that makes readers think. And I looked for places to use conjunctions to connect ideas. Remember, we were talking about conjunctions. So what you're going to be doing today, okay? Because we're sort of just at the beginning stages of this. So today you are going to generate questions, and that just means you're going to think of some questions about corn production, okay? Some questions that you personally have about corn production in the United States. And that's going to help you to focus on main ideas and key details as we read and view sources. So what are some questions that you personally might have about corn production in the United States? How corn is grown, how it is harvested, how does it get to our grocery store, right? Those might be some questions that you have. So your first assignment today is to go to the Google Doc that is linked along with today's date and assignment, and you're going to write 3 questions that you have about corn production. Okay, there's no right or wrong answers here. It's what questions do you have? And if you're kind of struggling to think of some questions, here are some question stems that you might use. I wish I knew more about. I wonder how blank happens. How might blank, right? Think of your W words, who, what, when, where, why, and H, how. So think of those words as you're formulating your questions. So you are going to open the Google Doc that is linked with this assignment, and you're going to write 3 questions that you have about corn production. And remember, there's no right or wrong answers. It's what you are wondering about. And you're going to type them directly on the Google Doc. So you can pause or stop the video, go write your 3 questions, and I will be here when you get back. Okay, now we're going to move on to identifying key details and determining central ideas, okay? So when you're reading a story, you kind of are trying to figure out, what is this trying to tell me? What is the central or main idea that I'm reading about here? So one thing that you can do to help you is to look at, and I think we did this when we were reading A Short History of a Special Plant, would be to look at the title, look at the headings of each section, right? Look at text features such as illustrations or pictures, the captions that go with those. Is there any diagrams in the story? Any maps or charts? So all of those things are going to give you an idea of the central idea. Now, as you're determining the central idea, you're going to read and annotate, and we've been doing that. Remember, annotate is a fancy word for taking notes. We wrote some questions in the margin. Remember, we were writing questions in the margin? That's annotating, right? Making connections. If you write a connection, that's annotating. If you underline or circle something, that's annotating, okay? Asking yourself, what is this text mostly about? If I had to sum this up in 1 or 2 sentences, what is it mostly about? And sometimes the central or main idea is stated. The author will tell you, and sometimes you kind of have to figure it out yourself. You have to infer it. So let's take a look at A Short History of a Special Plant again, okay? So we read this story, and remember when we read it, we talked about the pictures, we talked about the captions, we talked about how corn, was grown by the Native Americans, and it was called, and I'm going to say this, teosinte, and then the Europeans started calling it corn, how the Native Americans sort of first started to grow corn, cultivate it by using that 3 sisters system with the corn, the beans, and the squash, okay? So as we read this, what do you think was the central or main idea of this particular story? What do you think the author was mostly trying to tell us, if you had to sum it up in like 1 or 2 sentences? So let's take a look at paragraph 4. And paragraph 4 is on page 13 of your booklet, okay? We're going to read page 4 and see if we can figure out what the central idea is, okay? And pay attention to the heading, maybe if there's words that are used more than once, are there any graphic features that go with this, and any key details, okay? The first Native American corn farmers used the seeds from the healthiest corn plants to grow their crops. This selective breeding improved their crop yield. When farmers realized they could plant a surplus of corn and not hurt their fields, they grew larger crops and stored the leftover corn as a food supply that could last during the winter months. The Native American planting system was called the Three Sisters Method. For centuries, early farmers planted their fields with 3 plants: corn, squash, and beans together. Each plant helped the other grow, and the mixture of plants helped preserve nutrients in the soil. So there's a lot of, really important information in that paragraph. First, I think that Native American corn farmers, it took them a while to come up with a way that they could grow the corn in larger amounts and grow healthy plants. So I would say, like it says, selective breeding improved their crop yield. That means picking certain types of corn. That would be a key detail. It said that they would store the leftover corn as a food supply that would last. That would be a key detail. The Three Sisters method is a key detail. So I think that the main or central idea here is that Native American corn farmers, it took them some time to develop a way of successfully growing corn as a crop that they would have a lot of, right? They didn't just do it overnight. It took them some time and some trial and error to do that. Okay, now let's look at paragraph 5, which is there on page 13, okay? So again, look at the headings, if there are any subheadings, look at any graphic features. I see a diagram there that has labels on it. And if there are any key details or words or phrases that are repeated. The advantages of planting the 3 crops together were tenfold. Corn was a strong and vertical plant that stood straight, so the beans could curl up around its stalk. In turn, the beans fixed nitrogen in their roots, helping restore the soil. Meanwhile, the squash leaves spread out on the ground and retained moisture in the soil for the other plants. They also helped keep away pests. This mutually beneficial arrangement among the plants mimics the type of symbiosis found in nature. The end result was a healthy crop that yielded a variety of nutritious plants and also maintained the integrity of the soil. So, in that paragraph, I see a lot of key details, right? The description of the corn being strong and vertical, right? What job does each of the vegetables have? The corn, the beans, and the squash. Those are key details. And I would say that the central idea is that these 3 plants worked together to help keep each other growing strong and to produce more of each plant. So they were able to get more corn by planting using this Three Sisters method. So as I'm reading and I'm noticing all these key details, in my brain, I'm kind of putting those details all together to come up with a central idea. Okay, the author doesn't really come out and tell me. I kind of have to infer this a little bit. Okay, so what you're going to do on the next Google Doc assignment that is linked, it is a 2-page Google Doc, okay? So you're going to open the Google Doc and you're going to complete both pages of identifying key details and determining central ideas. So you're going to have to scroll down. So what you're going to do is you're going to read the paragraph and see what it's asking you to do. List key details. It might be asking you to list the central idea. So you're going to read each paragraph, and then in the box below it, you're going to type in what you think a key detail is, an example of a key detail, or an example of a central idea. Okay, so you're going to do that on assignment number 2 in the Google Doc that is linked. and make sure that you scroll down because it has 2 pages. So keep scrolling, okay? And it says down here, continue on the next page. So keep scrolling until you get to the end. So you can stop or pause the video here and come back when you are finished. Okay, the last part of our reading today is going to be independent reading. So you know by now that independent reading is done on your own. Find a quiet place away from distractions, right? Get started right away. Keep your eyes on the page. Read for the entire time. Think about what you're reading, right? In your brain, generate some of those questions. Make some of those text connections. Sort of as you're reading, maybe think, what is the central idea of what I am reading today or what I read today? And what are some key details? So you can either use a timer that you have at your house, or you can use an online timer. Set your timer for 15 minutes and find a book that you are reading and then go ahead and enjoy, okay? So I'm going to stop the video here and we will see you next time. Bye.